Support comes from Mechanics Bank, a West Coast bank providing premium personal and business banking services for 120 years. They understand relationships matter and go the extra mile to help clients reach their financial goals. Stop by a branch or visit mechanicsbank.com today. Mechanics Bank, member FDIC.
Men are reading less and less, and the literary world is increasingly seeing this disappearing demographic as a crisis. What's going on with men and reading? I'm Katie Campbell, and on the latest episode of KUOW's Arts and Culture podcast, Meet Me Here, the Boys in the Boat author Daniel James Brown tells me where he goes to find compelling stories exploring masculinity. Stories that just might get men reading again. Listen to Meet Me Here on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you've ever tried to blow dry your hair and use the microwave at the same time in an old house, then you know what happens when there's an overtaxed electrical system.
That's basically the U.S. power grid right now.
The explosive growth of AI and the massive data centers behind it are driving demand and straining the grid.
We're plugging in electric cars, heat pumps, and massive AI data centers all at once. And our grid can't handle the load. Demand is expected to grow by 30% over the next 10 years.
We're running out of capacity, and it's hitting our wallets as demand outpaces supply.
It's all unfolding as electricity bills climb nationwide, rising faster than inflation in many places, and in some regions far more sharply.
Big tech is betting on a solution straight out of science fiction: nuclear fusion.
It's the same reaction that lights up the sun, and it's happening right here in the rainy Pacific Northwest.
It truly could be the one-size-fits-all, universal, holy grail energy solution that helps us clean up our planet.
I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
I'm Joshua McNichols, and this is Booming. Could fusion really be the solution to our growing electricity crisis, or is it too good to be true? That's coming up.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
So, Joshua, we've both reported on how there's growing pressure on the electrical grid. And in some cases, that's pushing power companies back toward fossil fuels, even though we're trying to move away from them. Everybody is looking for new sources of power, and that's where nuclear fusion comes in. But before we get into all that, can you just help me understand the difference between nuclear fusion, this new thing, and the nuclear power that we're used to hearing about, that we think about when we think nuclear?
Yeah, that older, more conventional style of nuclear power is called fission. And, it's important to understand the difference between fission and fusion. Fission it's that older power in nuclear reactors that makes energy by breaking atoms apart, by splitting atoms. That's happening in Hanford in eastern Washington. But that technology also creates radioactive waste that stays deadly for 24,000 years.
Yikes.
Right? 24,000 years ago, humans were still nomadic hunter-gatherers. Fusion, on the other hand, makes energy by smashing atoms together. Experts say it's far safer and cleaner. It generates radioactive waste too, but it's only dangerous for about 12 years.
That's a timeline I can get my head around.
A lot of people who work at the companies that are developing fusion technology feel like this could be a game changer. They say it could produce almost unlimited amounts of power with very few resources. Imagine being able to take a train across the country powered by nothing more than a bucket of seawater and a little lithium.
You know that I'm dying for trains more than anything, but it's hard to picture. It sounds very sci-fi.
Yeah. To get a sense of how much of a difference this could make, I talked to Amy Jasper of Zap Energy. That's one of two fusion companies operating here in Washington state.
This would be truly transformational. It's carbon-free, it's clean, it's safe. Every other energy source has significant downsides or feasibility limitations. Fusion, if we can get there, has none of these limitations.
I noticed that she said, if we can get there. And I feel like I've been hearing that fusion is just around the corner for a long time. It's always just 10 years away. Meanwhile, electricity bills keep climbing, and we're seeing all this new demand from data centers and electrifying everything.
Yeah. I mean, electric bills are climbing because of all that demand. Seattle City Light expects rates to increase 7 to 10% every year for the next several years.
Wow.
But fusion, it's no longer like a dream for the future. We're already there. A few companies have been actually doing fusion for years now. They're just not producing power efficiently enough to make money at it yet. That's what always feels like it's 10 years away now. Fusion that we can afford.
Okay, so what's different about this moment? Why are people so excited about fusion now?
Well, what's different is our local fusion industry says it's close to making this technology economically viable.
I do know a little bit about this. So when we say economically viable, we mean we're getting to a point where we're getting more energy out of the reaction than it takes to create the reaction in the first place, right?
Yeah. The problem has always been that it takes a ton of energy to achieve fusion, and no one has been able to break even yet. But one local company says it's very close, like 3 years away. It's called Helion. The other company here, Zap, is more like 10 years away, but still not far off. Both of them are located in Everett, just 30 miles north of us here in Seattle. And, there are other fusion clusters around research universities and labs across the country, but Helion CEO David Kirtley says the fusion cluster in Seattle is special.
This area has just an absolutely perfect mix of engineering, technicians, machinists, just the right amount of workforce with the right experience so that they can come to Helion and then we can train them into being fusion experts.
These companies are sort of in a race now to be the first to solve this viability problem. And many experts say the finish line is in sight. That's what I heard from Bhuvana Srinivasan, who teaches nuclear physics at the University of Washington.
So fusion is at the stage of a mature science experiment. We know we can do it. We have a path to get there. It's a matter of ironing out the rest of the scientific discoveries and the engineering and technological challenges to figure out exactly when and exactly how we're going to do it.
It took 3 things to get to this moment.
Okay, what are the 3 things?
First, there's the demand for it that we've been talking about. Second, there have been some scientific breakthroughs. Scientists and engineers have figured out ways to capture fusion energy more efficiently, which has been the main obstacle. They've developed better semiconductors and stronger magnets. And third, people are just pouring money into it. We're talking $1.4 billion into Zap and Helion alone. That's according to PitchBook, which tracks these kinds of things for investors. And a lot of that money comes from players who are heavily invested in AI. Microsoft, Sam Altman of OpenAI, and Bill Gates.
They've certainly got some cash lying around.
Right. And there is a reason those investors are so interested in funding this. Most of them are associated with companies that use a lot of power. The first customers for nuclear fusion will be big tech companies like Microsoft, which will be relying more and more on energy-hungry AI. Microsoft has already spoken for all the power coming out of at least one of those plants.
Yeah, I actually went to the town where they're building that plant. And, it's kind of remarkable. On this one country road along the Columbia River, you have this big dam and substation, and then the world's first nuclear fusion plant being built, a new Microsoft data center also under construction, and an old aluminum plant that's being torn down. Sometimes it feels like you can tell the whole story of the economy right here in Washington. But I digress. Back to the fusion moment that we're in. It sounds like it's sort of a closed loop. You've got these big money interests helping to make it feasible, and then AI companies that they're associated with will also be the primary customers, at least to start. What about the rest of us? When will we start to benefit from this?
Well, eventually this power should help regular people like you and me, but this is sort of like other major scientific leaps forward, like space travel. The average person probably benefits eventually, just not right away.
I feel like we could have a debate over whether the average person benefits from the space program, although I guess we can thank them for astronaut ice cream, which I remember very fondly from elementary school.
Right. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Okay, so all of these factors are combining to make this fusion's moment. And you got to go see the reactors where this is actually taking place. So what's it like inside these facilities?
Yeah, I went to both Helion and Zap Energy, and they're practically next door to each other. They're both located in nondescript warehouse buildings in this sort of industrial section of Everett. Driving by, you might think that they were Amazon warehouses, but inside they're very different.
So if you follow me down, just watch your head. It's while you're wearing the hard hat. There's some low clearances.
In the center of these warehouses, each company is testing the latest generation of their reactors. To me, the reactors look kind of like steam locomotive engines that you'd see at the front of an old-fashioned train. You know, big metal cylinders held together by bolts, except they're sprouting big bundles of pipes full of gases and cables as thick as your thumb carrying electricity. It looks very steampunk.
Zoshi, to read me?
Yep, copy.
Let's go ahead and get started, please. Over.
Copy that. We will be starting here shortly.
Inside that metal cylinder is a little bit of plasma. That's the raw material that powers stars.
So right now you're seeing a plasma being generated every 5 seconds. And each of those plasmas is carrying, a whole bunch of current, like a lightning bolt's worth of current.
Zap and Helion have different ways of capturing that electricity.
Real quick, for those of us who weren't paying that much attention in chemistry, what is plasma exactly?
Well, plasma is a fourth state of matter. You've got solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. In plasma, individual atoms are stripped of their individuality, and you end up with a soup of electrons and nuclei, all separated from each other and ready for fusion. It's like when you cook bean soup too long and end up with mush.
Okay, that I can relate to.
So these fusion reactors crush hydrogen gas into plasma using powerful magnets or lasers or energy pulses like lightning bolts. And inside the plasma soup, the hydrogen atoms get so confused about whose protons, neutrons, and electrons belong to whom that the parts combine all wrong and fuse into something completely new, helium. It's like two people went into a room together and they came out as one bigger person. And this process releases a lot of energy.
How much energy are we talking about?
Well, individually, each plant might produce enough to power a medium-sized data center. So it's not a huge amount. But these companies are talking about building thousands of these small reactors all over the world. So that's how they get to this big vision that fusion could solve our electricity crisis.
So that's a lot of optimism and ambition. I want to know what the skeptics say about this.
Yeah, I wondered the same thing. So I talked to Scott Montgomery, who teaches energy policy at the University of Washington, and I asked him about a couple of things: the safety and the timeline. When it comes to safety, he says the people who claim fusion creates a lot less radioactive waste than fission are right. And this waste decays over a relatively short period of time, just 12 years. That means it's not nearly as dangerous for not nearly as long.
I'm not sure you'd want to make a toy out of it and put it in the bathtub with your toddler, but, it's still waste and something has to be done with it, right? I might bury it in my backyard for a little while, but, not too deeply. But that would probably work.
This might sound like an ignorant question, but we're talking about a lot of energy here, right? Is it possible that it could blow up?
No, I don't think that's an ignorant question at all. But unlike the types of disasters from fission that you've read about in history books, like Chernobyl, with fusion, if you shut the power off, it all just goes quiet. There's no runaway reaction that melts down the reactor and makes the whole area radioactive.
Okay, you can tell I'm haunted by the HBO miniseries on Chernobyl, but I'm glad to hear that. So what about the timeline? What did Scott say about that?
Well, he's a little more pessimistic there. Commercially viable fusion power in 3 years? He doubts it.
We understand that there has to be a promotional dimension to this. What I see is that a lot of these time projections are aimed at investors who prefer a 5 to 10 year schedule.
Basically, what he's saying is that these timelines are more aimed at impressing investors than based in reality. But Helion disagrees. They say they're on track to make this happen.
Okay, so we started this episode with the question of whether fusion power could reduce our electricity bills. What does your professor say about that?
Well, the bad news is Scott believes we won't see a reduction in our electric bills from this until 2050. That's the soonest he can imagine widespread use of fusion across North America. In the years before that, we're more likely to see only a handful of reactors, and that power is going to be bought up by Microsoft and Nucor Steel and other industrial companies before we get to tap into it. But here's the good news. Every data center that builds its own sustainable power source is a data center that isn't taking electricity from our existing supply. And so, while these early centers may not bring our electric bills down, they could keep our bills from rising as quickly as they would have otherwise.
Well, I guess that's something. Thanks for bringing us this story.
No problem. That's it for Booming. Thank you so much for listening.
Also, we have a question for you. If you live in the Seattle area, you may have noticed that it's gotten pretty darn expensive here. We want to know what your economic hacks are for getting by in a city with such a high cost of living. You can leave us a voicemail at 206-221-7158 or email us at booming@kuow.org, and you might show up in a future episode. And before we go, we're running an audience survey so that we can get to know you better and make sure that the show that we're making is the one that you want to be listening to. So if you're willing to give us a few minutes of your time, you can find the link to that survey in the show notes.
Also, thanks to those of you who donate to Booming. We couldn't make this show without you. If you want to donate, go to kuow.org/booming. Thanks.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Alec Cowan. Our editor is Carol Smith. I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
I'm Joshua McNichols.
And we'll see you next time.
I'm Chris Morgan, host of the Wild podcast. In Bellingham, Washington, there's a beautiful urban creek. But 26 years ago, a devastating explosion happened.
There's a big smoke. The sky is smoking.
Young lives were lost, and the creek and its ecosystems were obliterated. We tell the story of how Whatcom Creek found its way back to life. Find The Wild with Chris Morgan on the KUOW app or wherever you listen.